Hello, everyone. My name is Nat. I'm the managing editor at TechNasia Studios, and welcome to today's virtual event. This event is part of a pre event series leading up to TechNasia's flagship product development conference this June 8 and 9, featuring over 5,000 product professionals who will be sharing their insights on anything and everything product related. To further support our mission to serve Asia's tech community, this year's flagship product development conference is free for everyone. Tickets are limited, so get yours ASAP at pdc.techinasia.com before they run out. Now, on to today's agenda. It is my great pleasure to introduce all of you to PubNub, who is leading today's session. PubNub is a developer API platform that powers the real-time infrastructure for developers to build engaging online experiences. Our topic this morning is unlocking the power of virtual spaces for driving online interactions. And to lead the session, we have PubNub co-founder and CEO Todd Greene here to tell us more about it. We're going to start this event with a presentation from Todd, after which we will have a Q&A segment where we'll get around to answering any and all questions you might have about today's discussion. So if you have any questions, you can submit them via the chat feature and we'll get to them towards the end of the session. But without further ado, let's start this presentation. Please welcome onto the virtual stage PubNub co-founder and CEO Todd Greene.
I'm really excited to be presenting today here at Tech in Asia, and I want to talk today about virtual spaces, what they are, why we should care about them, and actually about the fact that all of us have either used or maybe even building a virtual space today. So let's get started. First of all, what is virtual space? Well, most of our lives are becoming virtual in some way, shape, or form. We're spending more and more amounts of time online doing more and more interesting things, right? So let me shrink myself down here so we can take a better look and dig into what these things are. Well, look, whether we're working online today, whether we are getting health care, talking to a doctor, whether we're exercising online, with bicycles that are all linked together, playing multiplayer games, dating online, right? Negotiating business now online, shopping online, gambling, learning, e-learning, all of these things require us to be in some kind of virtual space. We need virtual spaces. So what is a virtual space, right? Let's dig into that. Is virtual space some kind of VR? We know when we're in the real world, well, we're in marketplaces, we're in offices, we're doing those things. But, a lot of people would have you believe that a virtual space is what happens when you put virtual glasses on your head. And, that's why Facebook renamed themselves to Meta. And everyone's thinking about VR. But is that really what a virtual space is today? I don't think so. Virtual spaces are already here, and they're everywhere, and they're essential, right? Whether we're playing games online, whether we're in a browser, on a mobile phone, ordering a taxi, auctions, whether real-time auctions, chat applications, all of these things are just different kinds of virtual spaces. Basically places where we can get together and we can do those things online in a synchronous real-time way. As a matter of fact, when you look at the one thing that ties together all these explosive growth companies all over the world, right? Whether it's, like I said before, multiplayer games, connected fitness, ordering taxis, mobile gaming, chat, any of these things, they're all in different industries, but they have one thing in common. And that thing is that people and devices get together in some kind of online real-time way so they can be synchronized even though they all exist in different places physically. And that's what a virtual space is. Now, it's easy to talk about a virtual space, and there's huge numbers of examples of great applications that do this. But there's no consistent way that developers go about building and deploying an application that has these kinds of experiences. And so, what are the paths available today for software developers and for development or product teams that are looking to build the next greatest dating application or exercise equipment or multiplayer game or connected experience in a real-time sporting event? So many of these different kinds of experiences. Well, one thing that a lot of development teams start with is, in this kind of black box world of buying Lego blocks, they buy chat products, right? They buy drop-in chat applications. So why do they do that? Well, first of all, that's because chat is often the starting point for a virtual space, right? One of the first things we want to do synchronously inside an app, whether it's a business app or a dating app, we want to chat. So it's a pretty common starting point. Now the question is that really what you should do? Is that the thing that actually will make your app stand out, be differentiated? And I would argue no. I mean, the benefit of dropping in some chat functionality from a vendor is, hey, you get some interactivity really quickly. But the downside is that it's impossible to extend that, right? It's impossible to take those chat features and weave them in to the unique experience that's your application. That means it's hard to differentiate your application from the others that are out there. And it's too brittle. So when you want to change the functionality to make it unique, well, again, that's not usually possible for chat applications if you drop in these sort of black box chat vendors. So a lot of teams don't want to go that approach, and so they pick a different approach. And that is generally the build it myself approach. And if you're a software developer, that's really exciting, right? There are so many exciting things you can do when you have a lot of code and you have low-level infrastructure services, and you're going to piece together all of the technologies that you need not only to build chat, but real-time polling and synchronous UI that's working with, say, streaming video, or live auction results, or real-time inventory, or leaderboards, all of the other real-time features beyond chat that are so important for so many kinds of applications, not to mention in the world of IoT for connected fitness, for smart home, and everything else. So building it yourself does seem like a better option. But that has its own challenges, because while it's flexible, you need to ask yourself, is it your company's core mission to build and operate core infrastructure? And usually the answer to that question is no. Your developers are expensive, they're a scarce resource, they're hard to find, and good developers should be focused on making your product differentiated, not reinventing the wheel. And so what ends up happening is it gets expensive. All of a sudden you're spending more time maintaining all of this real-time synchronous infrastructure than you are actually building your application. You start to think, did we plan for regulatory compliance? Every country has its own laws. And finally, it's not just about building it. You have to operate all of this real-time synchronous environment. And if that part of your application goes down and your users can't interact together, then the entire application doesn't work. And so the companies and the teams that embark on a plan to build their own infrastructure very often fail in the long term. So that really is because there's a lot of necessities or necessary technologies and features for these real-time synchronous applications that go beyond chat. Well, of course you need the real-time messaging, but you also need to think about what spaces are my users going into. Is this a two-person chat room like a doctor-patient? Is it 1 million people who are watching the IPL together and doing polls and trivia and sentiment analysis? So what are the rules and what are the characteristics of the virtual spaces that your application need? Also, what are the membership rules, right? So which users are allowed into which spaces, and when they're there, what are they allowed to do there? If you don't think about those things, it's just some like if-then statements. Well, it turns into a huge, complicated set of challenges for a development team to think about, especially as product managers invent new features. Beyond that, you've got all these questions around who's online and who's offline. So I need to know not just, hey, can a person chat? But are they there right now? What are they doing at this very moment? What location are they in? So what's their presence information? I also want to put logic inside those applications. So it's, in the old world of request response applications, I can just sort of hit the server, run some logic, and come back. But in the world of these large-scale synchronous applications, I want to be able to put my real-time logic right in the middle of the application. So when messages are flying in from users, I want to add business logic right there, right at the edge, so that in low latency, 100 millisecond conditions, I can get experiences that everyone in that virtual space can interact with. I need to think about regulatory compliance. I talked about that earlier, but you've got GDPR in Europe, CCPA in California, and across all over Asia, you've got regulations in India, in Korea, and many, many other places. You have to scale this. Your audience is going to grow if your application grows, and you have to start thinking about how are users going to interact in a virtual space across the ocean or across countries. You probably have a heterogeneous environment of iPhones and Androids and browsers and JavaScript and servers, and you need to make sure your infrastructure works across all of those different kinds of products or devices that you're supporting. And it goes on. All of that data flowing around as people are chatting and voting and devices are being controlled in real time, how does that integrate to my backend and to all the other third-party systems I might use for analytics, for machine learning, and everything else? What about data encryption? What am I doing there? How am I operating this infrastructure in a 7 by 24 way? And finally, how am I taking all that data, piecing it together to get the insights and the analytics that I need to see if my business and my end users are engaging in the way that I want them to. So as you can see, when people embark on this path, they often just say, well, all I really need is real-time messaging. I need to send a message from user A to other people in the room. The reality is, as our applications evolve from being single user into many, many flavors of multi-user real-time synchronous, you need to have a lot of functionality to consider to ensure that your application is going to grow and scale. And that's really what PubNub does. We have something called a virtual space platform, and specifically designed for software teams to build and deploy and operate compliant, scalable, secure, reliable applications of all sorts around the globe. And we do it in a way where our data is replicated globally, stored locally, where we have SDKs for over 50 environments. We have 5 nines SLAs. That means if we have more than 26 seconds of downtime, we give credits back to you. And completely auto-scaled. So as you add users, our network infrastructure just continues to scale. Lots and lots of customers. We have thousands of customers that use us today with trillions of API transactions. A few examples in the gaming space, Pocket Gems, which uses us for multi-game interaction, for collaboration, for leaderboards. One of the largest live concert companies in the United States, called Live Nation, uses us to power the social experience around live streaming concerts. And they've run thousands of concerts on PubNub where users can interact as they're watching the video stream in a lot of really interesting, creative ways. In the smart home space, well, that's also a virtual space, right? As you control your devices, you want to make sure that everyone, all your family members and your devices are in the same virtual space so you can see their status, you can control them, and they can alert you when something changes. Many smart home companies like Vivint and Logitech and many, many others use us in this space. A very large shoe company whose brand I can't specifically name uses us for all their shoe launch events. So every time they launch a new product, they get a celebrity or an athlete to talk about it. They do that in a PubNub-powered application. And a lot of B2B companies like Atlassian, Autodesk, DocuSign, and so many others use PubNub for all the real-time synchronous applications functionality that they have inside all of their suite of applications. And one more example, another B2B company, Customer, which is part of Meta or Facebook, is actually powering their entire customer support platform on top of PubNub. So it really doesn't matter what kind of real-time synchronous virtual space application you're building. PubNub has been designed specifically for these kinds of interactions. And as I mentioned before, we have thousands of customers, and we've done over 3 trillion transactions in the last month and growing. So really, really been doing this for many years now, and really focused on making it easy to build these large-scale applications in a secure, reliable way. Now, we're really turning our focus to Asia. It's our number one region for us today. It's where we're spending a lot of time putting feet on the ground, and here's why. You can see in this heat map already that with just 6 hours of snapshot, we already see a significant amount of traffic in Asia. But there's more. This is a difficult chart to read, but what this shows here is, I'll stand to the side here, is this is actually from the Affordable Internet Index, and it shows the countries and the continents where there's the most affordable internet access to the largest amounts of population. And those green dots there represent Asia. And what you can see is there are more countries in Asia that represent that have affordable internet access, which means you've got this giant population of people who are looking to be on the cutting edge of using various kinds of virtual space applications. And so we're seeing this huge demand in this region for this kind of functionality and applications that can localize these experiences country by country by country. And so we're really, as I said, turning our focus here. We have teams on the ground now in Singapore, in India, in Hong Kong. We have 6 data center points of presence now spread throughout Asia to make sure that no matter where your audience is, it's going to have a under 100 millisecond low latency experience, whether it's 2 people in a virtual space or over 25 million, which we've done, 25.4 million in the same virtual space on PubNub. And finally, we don't just support things like GDPR and US compliance rules, but we allow you to build applications using PubNub that support things like India's PDP compliance rules, PIPA from Korea, and just about any other compliance regulations you'll find yourself seeing in the region. And now, looking ahead, it's not just about real-time data in these virtual spaces. It's about how do we define ownership. So we're seeing, things like NFTs emerging and blockchain, currencies, right, cryptocurrencies, so people can exchange actual value inside virtual spaces. We can now do binding agreements thanks to, digital contracts, smart contracts, things like that on the blockchain. Always on internet, right? So this is something we've seen for a while, but now as it's not just always on for our phones or our browsers, it's always on for embedded devices where it's now effective to keep them connected always to PubNub. We can do really amazing things with tiny little embedded devices as part of a virtual space that you can control. And finally, connected devices, right? The support for, as I said, not just a couple, but hundreds and hundreds of different flavors of devices that are out there. So, finally, this is why people choose PubNub, right? They can implement and innovate any kind of feature quickly. They get the regulatory compliance for any audience in any country they need. They get the reliability at scale so they don't have downtimes and failures as their application gets popular. And then finally, we have so many layers of security to make sure that as you scale these applications, you're protected from the really common ways that applications sometimes get subverted. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me and talk about PubNub. We're pretty excited. We're just getting started. The virtual space world is just exploding today, and we're seeing opportunities in so many places. So we're excited to see what you're going to build with PubNub, and thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much, Todd. A lot of great insights, and I certainly learned a lot from your session this morning. So we actually already have several questions from the audience. So why don't you come on stage? And if you're ready, we can dive into our Q&A segment.
And here I am.
All
Thanks
right.
so much for
Welcome to
inviting
the
us.
virtual stage here at your pre-PDC event. Once again, thank you so much. But if you're good to go, why not let's dive into the first question of this morning.
That sounds good.
Okay, so we have a question here. It's an anonymous question. How did PubNub come to the virtual spaces concept? I think that's quite interesting because you guys started in 2010 at a time when, correct me if I'm wrong, virtual spaces were kind of just becoming the norm. So how did you guys come to this virtual spaces concept?
Yeah, we were really incorporated in 2012 with our first sort of hires and round of financing about 10 years ago, and we always started this company with this vision. Our sort of funny way of talking about it was one step closer to the singularity, that everyone was going to be merged together online and being able to interact together in this one exciting way that would allow us to be real time connected to various people. And obviously, the experience we have online is getting better and better compared to where it was 10 years ago, but we still have a long way to go until the experiences we have can really be as good or even better than the kinds of experiences we have in the real world. And so that's really been our mission since the beginning of PubNub, is what kind of platform can we offer to software developers and software teams so that they have so many creative ideas about different kinds of experiences, not just chat, right, but various ways of getting people to interact online and come together. How can we make sure that they can do any of those things on the technology that we build on the PubNub Virtual Spaces platform? And so we've always realized that the internet was moving that way. In fact, we've always called that the beginning of Web 3.0, moving from interactive websites to multi-user synchronous experiences. And that's really kind of the genesis of virtual spaces.
Right, right. Well, that's super interesting. And I'm excited to see where this virtual spaces concept will evolve in the next few years or so. Next question we have here from an Eric Pablo. And this is concerning something that is pretty much a hot topic these days.
Yeah.
Do you plan on joining the metaverse?
Do we plan on joining the metaverse? Well, I would argue that there are many, many metaverses, right? It's a multiverse. And I think the way the world is shaping up is not, I know there are companies out there, namely Meta, trying to build the one, Ready Player One style experience that everyone jumps into, right? But I think that's not the way it's playing out, right? What's playing out is that many different organizations are creating a unique experience for those people at that time. Right. So the experience you have when you jump into watching an IPL event and you're seeing the users interact and you're expressing your sentiment and you're gambling and you're betting and you're answering trivia questions, it is a metaverse. It's an experience. But you're going to leave there at some point and you're going to go talk to your doctor in a different experience. Right. And I think it's much more likely that we will see a lot of different experiences that different organizations create as opposed to one metaverse. And so we really believe in the multiverse. And we really I've designed PubNub to power all of those various multiverses and connect them to larger metaverses as they emerge. But I think that to think that the metaverse is just VR headsets, well, that's just one interface. But today we're in a lot more metaverses using our keyboards and our mouse, right? When we're doing multiplayer games, when we are in telehealth or an e-learning experience, when we are watching a sporting event. So I think we've been interacting in metaverses for a long time, and a VR headset is just simply another interface into that same multi-user experience.
Right, right. And I guess it's very timely that we're talking about the metaverse and multiverses here because Marvel's latest movie is all about the multiverse. So
That's
that's
right.
very interesting.
Yeah, they stole everything from us. We're gonna have a talk
They
with them.
stole everything from you guys. Yeah. All right. So the next question here we have is from another anonymous attendee. During this session, you discussed how PubNub powers core competencies for developers so that they can focus on building more important features. How have you seen this impact for developers?
Looking at the question, a long question. Yeah, that's a good question. So I did talk a lot in the intro about all of the things that someone needs to think about when they're building these applications, right? It is pretty complicated. It always starts with saying, "Hey, it's really simple. I'm just going to have a few people, interact together," and all of a sudden it explodes into a huge backlog of requirements from product managers, a set of scaling issues that the ops team is complaining about. Angry users who can't get the experience they were promised, and so these things are hard. And just like in any evolution of any platform, people start building things themselves. And going back to the early days of the web, believe it or not, every company that wanted to launch a website would write their own app server. And that's crazy. No one would ever do that today. And, more recently, people would build their own mobile frameworks until their mobile platforms. I think that the same thing is now happening really quickly here. And so, as developers become more scarce and more valuable, companies are being very selfish, rightly so, with where they focus that development team. If their development team is focused on building infrastructure, well, that better be the core competency of that company. And if not, they should be focusing on what's going to differentiate that virtual experience that they're building. And so what we've seen at PubNub is just thousands of companies now being able to accelerate the way they go to market, whether it's, shoe launches for a sporting, a shoe company that I mentioned earlier, whether it's multiplayer games, especially during COVID, we saw a huge expansion of telehealth and e-learning platforms built on PubNub. And so regardless of the kinds of interaction that people want to do synchronously online, we have really been fortunate, and I was pretty excited actually to see our platform really be in the right place at the right time. And as I mentioned earlier, that is especially true here in Asia. So we're excited. We couldn't find a better place than Tech in Asia to launch our presence here. And I'll talk about that a bit later, but really being able to enable so many companies across Asia to do the same kinds of things.
Right. Well, as much as you love being here, we so much more love you joining us here for this virtual event. So thank you so much. One more question here from another anonymous attendee. You mentioned during your presentation that there is an increased focus on investing in APAC.
Yep.
What resources are being provided for the region?
Good question. So we are focusing. We have a 10-person team already spread across Singapore, Hong Kong, India, a number of places today, and we're expecting 300% growth in Asia in the next 18 months. We're seeing just really, really exciting opportunities here, and so. We actually, in fact, anyone who's listening, we are looking to bring on a marketing resource. So anyone who is really excited about helping PubNub in marketing, I'll tell you, there's nothing more exciting than marketing the kinds of experiences and that exist around virtual spaces and virtual events. But beyond that, we have a great technical team of people who can really help customers go deep and implement these kinds of difficult software easily on our platform. We have account managers. We have an entire customer account team that can focus on both the technical and the business aspects of making sure that we're face to face with customers here. And we also have 7x24 support, dedicated support people in India and in Singapore.
Right. So it's a very much growing team.
Yep.
And you guys are starting to look more into this region and how you can develop everything that's going on here.
Absolutely, and we've got some great customers already. Swiggy is a customer of PubNub. So is Gojek. In the Web3 space, right? We've got MetaMask, Bitbank is on PubNub. Axie Infinity. There's a large number of customers already here, but we really want to. It's a gigantic region, and there are so many great companies here. And we really feel like by joining these companies face to face, and partnering with them, we're going to be able to help them out. They'll be able to help us out, and it should be a virtuous cycle. So we're pretty excited to expand here.
Right, and I'm excited as well. So we have time for a couple more questions. Let's just look at them. One more here from another anonymous attendee. How does PubNub fit into the growing Web 3.0 space?
Good question. Well, I think that always starts by defining Web3, and these terms always get blurry. But for us, as I said earlier, Web3 starts with the movement of people to interact online synchronously, to work together, to play together, to talk to their doctors together, to basically be in environments, to watch sports together, all of those different things. And when you think about interacting online, we always start with thinking about, oh, we're going to communicate. I'm going to chat. I'm going to do a video call with my friends. But if you think about what happens in the real world, well, communication is only one of the things we do. We also sign contracts. We also buy and sell things. We negotiate. We do lots of things, right? And for us, if you think about when people normally talk about Web3, they're talking about, what are they talking about? Cryptocurrency. They're talking about smart contracts. They're talking about NFTs. Well, what are those things? Well, NFTs are just a way to define ownership and transfer ownership in a virtual space, right? Smart contracts are just a way to create agreements in the virtual space. And obviously, cryptocurrency is a way to exchange value in that space. And so ultimately, for us, we see all of these things as just components of allowing people to do more when they're online versus when they're just in the real world. And so that's really how we both see Web3, and also, of course, how we are participating in it.
Right, right. So you kind of see this as the very natural development of the virtual spaces concept that you guys bought into
Exactly.
um, 10 years ago.
You got it.
Yeah, right.
That's right.
Okay. Okay, so I think we have time for one last question. So this anonymous attendee again asks, curious about how your thinking process was when deciding to focus on enabling virtual spaces. What's the trigger?
Good question. I think for us, it was the realization early on that we weren't going to be defining what people could do inside a synchronous environment, because there are 1,000 creative ideas out there, and everyone always starts by thinking about chat. But we realized that whether it's chat, whether it's real-time auctions where you're sending bids back and forth, whether it is being on a digital piece of exercise equipment and seeing the performance of the other people and competing in them in a race and watching a leaderboard, these are all different instantiations of ways we can interact online. And so for us, the aha moment was, well, let's not build this black box for chat that just has chat. Let's not build a real-time leaderboard widget. Let's not build, let's think about it from a slightly lower level. And what are the atomic components? What are the software design patterns that have to be different from the ones that we've built the web on and the mobile world on, so that you can build any of these things, right? And so if you're in the software world, you think about event-driven development, right? You think about events that get fired and being able to act on those events. Now, that's great. But if you then extend out to web scale, where you're not thinking of server event-driven development with a few hundred servers, but you're thinking about tens of millions of end users, all firing off events, whether those are chat messages or this RPM of a cycle or anything that they're doing, how do we make sure that we have an environment that an app developer can use that is easy but powerful and can enable all of those experiences without us having to define the creative aspect of what needs to happen? And so we really see our customers as being the creative brains that are creating these amazing new kinds of experience we never could have thought of ourselves. And we're providing the underpinnings, all of that core data streaming, event-driven processing, so that people can build these things at massive scale and be compliant and support all these different platforms and not crash as it scales and do all of the things that are necessary to actually make these apps work. And that's effectively how we realize that it's about the virtual space. And that's really where we kind of coined that term. And that's obviously where Marvel stole everything from us. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Todd. I had a real pleasure speaking with you this morning here for us, and I guess evening over where you are. But that's all the time we have for today. If anyone else wants to reach you, anyone else has further questions, I'm guessing they can find you guys at pubnub.com. Any other way to reach you?
PubNub.com. We're on Twitter at PubNub. We are at on LinkedIn. I'm Twitter at Greene, Tgreene. So many different ways to reach us. Just do a Google search for PubNub and you'll find all the different avenues. So please do. And we'd love to help you out in any way. We love working with developers, who are just getting companies started to the world's largest companies.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Todd. I hope you had a good time today because I certainly had a great time speaking with you. Thanks
This
so
was
much.
great. This is a lot of fun. I'm really excited as when I actually come and meet you soon. So it's been really, really great. Thank you so much for allowing us to participate.
All right. So, to all of you watching at home or in the office as well, thank you because we couldn't have done this without you. But before we go, don't forget that you can get a free ticket to our upcoming product development conference right this second at pdc.techinasia.com. We'll be having product leads from GoTo Financial, Carousel, Stripe, Slack, Traveloka, and more speaking, alongside exciting content on Web3 product development. So go over now to the PDC website and sign up before our tickets sell out. And that's a wrap. So thank you once again, everyone, for your participation and your questions. And of course, a big thank you to Todd and the PubNub team for joining us today and making this event possible. Take care, happy Friday. And on behalf of the TechNasia team, my name's Nat. See you on June 8 and 9 at our product development conference.
Thank you, Nat.